Up next, we're fortunate to have market leaders, business franchise owners. I want to ask Eva August, from the CEO of Century 21, to join me. Herschel Jawitz, CEO of Jawitz Properties, and also Barry Davies, COO of Everitt. If you can join me, we're really fortunate, not just to talk maybe from a software point of view, but to hear from the people leading big companies, big groups, of what they've experienced on the ground. So thank you very much, Barry, Herschel, and Eva, for joining us this morning. It's really a privilege to have you with us. I want to maybe start with Herschel. Herschel, last year at your Connect event, you referred to rentals as the golden river of annuity income. Just help us with what changed that thinking to elevate rentals to such a strategic annuity.
Thanks, Schalk, and thanks for having us. And Barry and Eva, good to be on the panel with you. So I grew up in a family business where a couple of my father's favorite sayings was that the whiteboard has no memory. So every month we would write up our sales onto the whiteboard, and the first of the next month that whiteboard would be written clean. And yeah, his other saying was that you're only as good as your last deal. Both of which are really frustrating, but they are to a large degree truthful. And I think that over the evolution of our business, we've always been traditionally a residential sales company. That's where our resources have been focused. That's where our thinking has been focused, our training, our terminology. And then, over the progression of time, you've got clients who want to rent, and then they want to know whether you can look after their property and collect the rent and handle the maintenance. And you kind of stumble into those areas of the business. But I think over time, as we've evolved the business, as it's become a second generation family business, and we're looking ahead into third generations and around creating value, you start to look at those revenue streams, and you start to look at creating long-term value. And specifically at the moment, we're talking about long-term value in our family business. And one of the key areas of that is around trying to shift away from or reduce your dependence on that whiteboard that has no memory. And so, we've shifted. The rental side of the business is pretty similar, but then you get into the rental management side of the business, and that has a memory, and that is about annuity income. And that annuity income stream is what we call our river of gold. And it's a key focus of our business and our growth. And it's a big word, but diversifying our revenue stream, and it also enables us to offer a holistic service to our clients.
Brilliant. Your whiteboard analogy is what my dad echoed in my ear as well. Schalk, the whiteboard doesn't lie, and the month end is approaching. What's happening? And then when you hit the first day of the month, you almost want to go to the office because the board is empty again. So I can resonate with that. Herschel, the second question, from your perspective, what would you say separates a traditional rental book from a professionally managed rental book that delivers that long-term predictable value?
So I think I've been listening to some of your previous panelists and listening to you talk, and I think you've nailed the shift in thinking about moving from a service-driven thinking to managing your clients' assets. And just listening to the talk about, I think Jean mentioned, the average value of a portfolio being managed is 2 million rand, and I would assume that's in the value of the property. So you often read in the paper around asset management companies of managing billions, and they've grown the value of their portfolio by billions. And I think that's the thinking that needs to happen to make that shift. It's obviously got to be underpinned by good service. So there's managing the financial asset, which is around the rent and negotiating escalations, and then there's the physical asset management side, which sits a lot on the maintenance side, and together those create value for your client. They are all underpinned by being able to offer a service that creates the value both financially and in terms of the physical asset. But I think it requires that mindset shift around service and administration, which has to be there, and much more into that client focused around you're managing their asset, no different to any of the multi-billion rand asset management companies that we read about every day in the business.
You just made a comment about so John mentioned the average size. If we take 1.3 million as an average price, almost managing 300 million rand. That's the assets they're managing, the value of the assets. And looking at just the business value from a business owner point of view, that 2 million is what it is today. And that's just beautiful to know. At least you're building an asset that you can obviously work on. So that is just great to echo that, Herschel. Eva, Century One has been very deliberate about driving rental growth. I was at your conference last year as well. And you've even requiring franchisees to either actively use their rental license or separate it out. What was your strategic thinking behind such a decisive move within your group?
Schalk, good morning. Thank you for that question. It's a fully loaded question, and there are so many answers to that. But if I had to chunk it down, the truth is that our small, big company doesn't want to be a single transaction company. We are leaving so much opportunity on the table, so much revenue on the table by not making it primary. And then also, in hindsight, if we look at the businesses in our ecosystem, Marina used the word microeconomy, which I love. If we look at our leaders and our partners nationally and globally, the ones that can weather any storm, really, it is our leaders that have strong rental portfolios that are true rental consultants in the form of asset management. So there's a lot of reasons, but just too much opportunity cost. We are already, and I can speak as this from the property practitioner to the rookie looking at which way to go. I mean, Jean has already mentioned that the portfolio size on average has gone from 150 homes that we managed to 220 across the country. That is a huge stat in terms of this is not slowing down. So essentially, we choose and we have a passion and a desire to create wealth in our families, in our lives, in South Africa, in real estate. And we cannot do that fully if we keep ignoring rental asset management. We certainly just don't want to be half pregnant in the industry.
Absolutely. Well answered there. I think what you just shared, some might see that as a drastic step, but how do you balance franchise autonomy with a need to build strong, future-focused rental businesses?
I think the best way long term is just to constantly communicate and educate on the benefits of it. Tell the story, show the data. We've got data like we've never had before to show. Highlight more, spotlight more the performance of those that choose this. And also show how closely linked it is to our traditional model of real estate transactions. If we show how they are so carefully linked, one of the opportunity costs is that if we don't do this, we're losing a buyer pipeline at some point in the journey and a seller pipeline, which is the foundation of our traditional agency. We're a traditional business model. So how do we balance it? Education, hand-holding, spotlighting. But ultimately, the mandate of our organization is to be profitable and to grow in market share. So the first way is show the benefit, show the return on investment. And if not, then the franchising company can enforce those changes and allow other leaders within territories to do such a move. And also, we are seeing, though, that it's not necessary. Our leaders are providing a lot of education to the property professional in the market on how to be that consultant to the buyer and seller who is a landlord and who is a I think I don't know where I got the stat. It was in the last year. If we look at South Africa in particular, about 6 out of 10 homes, which is still a very good stat. It's good for our traditional business. 6 out of 10 home ownerships are due to owner occupiers. The rest are investors. The rest are looking at diversifying their portfolio. Jean says the average portfolio has moved from 3 income streams, which is what we were taught, 10, 20 years ago, to be secure in your life, to 5 income streams. And that is opportunity. So if I had to chunk it down, we don't need more property professionals in the industry. We don't need more leaders in the industry. We just need to leverage the asset class of rental management.
Very good. Thank you, Eva. Barry, welcome to you as well. I was with you online a few years ago, and I loved your quote, as rentals as this lost cousin. No one wants to be a lost cousin. That's actually what it is. Can you remind us what you meant by that? And at that time, and our perception has shifted. We know it's not quick, but our perception has shifted over that time. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Schalk, I'm very glad. It's always lovely when people bring back things I said years ago. As long as nobody quotes me on what happened between the Stormers and the Sharks, I'm okay at the moment.
Please don't do that.
And as a Stormers supporter, you know how I feel. It was as much a poor cousin as a lost cousin. And I was talking about how rentals were often treated or seen inside estate agencies, and I was as guilty of it. I'm a sales guy who's moved into rentals, and that's the way they were treated in businesses for years. The rental market was there, generated fees, but it didn't always get the same leadership attention, the investment in systems, the recognition of the status compared to sales. Very often it was just sort of a bolt-on service rather than a focus. And in many agencies, the center of gravity was, and I think in a lot of agencies still is, sales. That's where the glamour is. That's where the big commission checks were. That's where the recognition awards and attention tended to land. And in many of those businesses, rentals sort of sat on the side of the desk. Or a story I like to tell from years ago is I was in a holiday letting operation down in the South Coast, and right at the back of the office there was something that looked like a cave. It was something a little bit Jurassic. It was dark, and there were people sitting in there, and I said to the lady at the front, "So what's that?" She said, "No, that's our rentals department." Sure. I was like, hit them in the back of the business. And true story. It stuck with me. Admin heavy, under-resourced, measured on volume rather than being seen as a quality business or relationship building opportunity. It was a support function rather than a value driver. And several dynamics at the time and still continue to contribute to it. So many rental portfolios people have built as a defensive measure. They're simply to control their existing sales clients or the stock in the marketplace on clients who subsequently rented out their properties. It wasn't really, it was about holding on to the client and the property so you didn't lose it to another agency, which is, it's the wrong mindset. And what's shifted, I think, since then is that it's gone from defense to growth and from transactions to relationships. Big move. Many rental businesses have moved from that, just keep the stock, to let's build a really solid business. Don't get me wrong, controlling stock isn't wrong, but it can't be the only reason. Rental businesses have changed. It's increasingly being seen as an opportunity to develop customer relationships as well as experience for investors, landlords, and tenants. Great for our business, generates massive amount of referrals, strengthens the brand, and certainly creates longer client lifetimes, as well as feeding sales as a side benefit as such, because you're in that profit journey in rentals every day.
Absolutely. True. I want to maybe let's into the next question. You've been running the Creating the Smiles campaign within your group, and also introducing the asset management thinking into your rental division, supported by that philosophy, particularly elevating the experience for investors, tenants, and the professionals delivering that service. Can you maybe give us some insight into how that's playing off and what you're seeing at the moment?
Okay, everybody in the group knows about Creating Smiles, but for people outside of that, Creating Smiles was a campaign And it's about the whole journey, not just the end moment in our business, whether it's sales. So much of what happens in our business is about the result per se. The Creating Smiles campaigns was built on the concept of smiles accompanying every step of the process, including the small moments, simple update calls, just touching base with the client. That was sort of the standard we set for ourselves and in the campaign. And Creative Smiles has always been it's a people first promise. And to us in the rental side of the business, asset management is how we operationalize, for want of, it's not really a word, but for want of a better word, how we operationalize that promise into rentals. Because with rentals, pressure and friction show up first, not like in sales at the end. It's an ongoing process.
Yes.
Asset management thinking in rentals to us is one of the more practical ways to make that real, because rentals is where the journey is lived day to day, just not when you put the property on the market and when it's sold and you move on. And from our investors, the concept of asset management, and it's been a shift, and it's an ongoing shift. Not everybody comes along on day one. You know how long we've been working on it. We've had many conversations on this. And we've shifted that conversation from we placed a tenant to we're protecting your income and your asset.
There we go.
It has meant a tighter focus on, all the good stuff, and the hygiene still needs to be there. Maintenance, clear reporting, keeping owners advised, and feeling like they're in control, not kept in the dark. And that's where a lot of the smiles comes from in rentals. Sort of quiet confidence and fewer nasty surprises. For tenants, it's helped us lift the service from transactional to more professional. And clear expectations, faster issue resolution, a lot better communication. I think that's a lot of what's happening there. And for the rental pros sort of delivering the service, it changes identity and capability. To me, language is important. If somebody sees themselves in that analogy I spoke about earlier as the bridge troll that sits in the cave at the back of the office, how do they deal with clients? We want to change their identity. These are not people just processing paperwork. They're managing risk, relationships, and outcomes. It's meaningful work.
Absolutely.
Creating Smiles for us means going above and beyond on every step. Now, people talk about commitment to excellence very loosely and sometimes without a lot of depth behind it, but it goes to this campaign. And that applies also in terms of where the likes of WeconnectU have come into our equation, how we equipped our people with good systems, great processes that support that behind it, and to give them more time to spend their energy on the relationship aspect as opposed to just the paperwork.
That's good. That's good.
Schalk, I just wanted to just maybe add, building on some of those points, is just around, what Eva said about whether the franchisees or independently owned offices want to go into that rentals and property management. I do triathlon, and it's a bit like, the swim makes up the smallest part of an Ironman race, but it holds the biggest fear factor. And it's the part of the race where if it goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong when you're sitting in the middle of the ocean or the middle of a dam. And I've often found that our franchisees have that kind of same view, and we used to have that view, that when rentals go wrong, they can go horribly wrong for little money, and over small issues. And there's this real fear factor about, do we want to get into it? Is it worth the hassle? How do we make that shift? And I will say this is that, as Barry alluded to, you obviously want your people to be client facing, but it does have to be when we've been able to show them, for example, with WeConnectU, that there are good systems and processes and good reporting, it starts to take away a lot of that fear about how do we set this business up, how do we start the business, and how do we allow our people to be client facing as opposed to being immersed in this administrative nightmare. And so we've it's been a gradual kind of push-pull, but I think over time, we have, and as Barry and Eva have alluded to, your officers and your principals start to see the benefit far outweighing the risks of going into this side of the business.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I was going to say, give that man a bell, and I will organize that for you. I want to ask, we are over time, but I want to ask this question, and I know that our audience is still sitting, and thank you for still being with us. I want to believe there's good content you're also enjoying. I want to ask each one of you just a one-liner, what key message you can bring to the market in terms of a piece of advice that you would give to them. So I want to ask for one-liners, and then I'll wrap the session. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'll start with you, Herschel.
One piece of advice when it comes to rentals is that I always say to our people, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So take the shot. You need to practice, you need to prepare, you need to go in with your eyes open. But if you can get it right, and it is possible to get it right, and you've heard from Barry and Eva and myself, it opens up a whole new thinking process. It opens up a whole new value creation, not only for your business, but for your clients.
Thank you for that, Herschel. Eva, you're next.
It's always worth it, Schalk. If you feel like you can't do it, you must do it. When we look at long-term companies, and we've got people looking at retirement and selling and coming and going, all the hard difficulty, late nights, chaos, all of that is worth the asset class that it creates. And we've got the data and the support and the partnerships in the marketplace to make it work. You're one good person, one micro decision away from completely changing your business as an agent, a property professional, and as a business owner.
Well, give that lady a bunch of flowers. Barry, you next.
Do I get a bells as well?
I'll give you something else.
You can have mine, Barry.
Okay, no, I'll go with the Merlot then. Yeah. Final message in terms of this, and particularly pertains in our business to rentals, is that leadership sets the standard. Your leadership in your rental business is incredibly important. If what gets respected gets repeated, and the behavior that you're looking to get from your people, you will get. But it starts at the top.